What's going on, guys? Garrett and Ryan with Executive Training Group. We are here to talk today about a couple different things, but really if you're somebody who's trying to switch over to a red dot, you shoot iron sights, this video is kind of be a guide to how to do that better for you, how to kind of start being able to shoot a red dot, be effective with a red dot, and get behind all the craze about red dots. If you don't know what we do, head to our website, www.executivetraininggrp.com. There is a link in the description. We have products, we have classes, we have all sorts of things coming up. We got dogs playing fetch in the middle group. Yeah, let's how do we say this? Let's get right into it. Let's get into it. This one and this. Able to maintain, like there's a little bit of vertical up and down, but I'm able to put those, that's kind of a practical. My grip is not effective. You don't really hear too many people like, oh, she got iron sights on my handgun, like, you know, having a hard time finding the front sight. Like, that's not a common thing that you hear. It's usually the other way around. And there's a couple reasons I think that you don't hear that, where people are like, I'm having a real hard time with iron sights. One of the biggest ones is it's usually that they're failing their presentation of the gun. And iron sights have a bigger margin for error when you do that. So if you don't have a consistent grip, if you have some of these things we're gonna talk about today, you'll present the gun out, your gun will be like way off into the whatever direction, and then you'll be like, oh, there's my front sight, there's my rear sight, problem solved, right? And you'll kind of grade yourself as like, oh, that was a pass. That's why you hear a lot of people talking about dropping that front sight into view, so presenting with the muzzle a little bit high and then dropping it into front view. This is kind of like a Band-Aid on a gunshot, in my opinion, type thing. Is like, hey, this is a very, very fundamental thing that you need to get correctly. This is a very fundamental thing that you need to understand. Shooting is the advanced application of fundamentals. And I really don't think that mentality sets you up for success in whether it be shooting performance or in self-defense. In my opinion, shooting is shooting is shooting. And yeah, this is just kind of a crutch. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think what he's basically saying is you may be, if you're an iron sight shooter, you may be presenting the gun, seeing your sight picture is not perfect, and then you fix it and you shoot and everything's fine, and you're not recognizing that as a failure point of your presentation. Yeah, I think that's the gist of it.
And I think a lot of people get away with that habit, and then they surpass it and they don't do it. So like the dropping the front sight into the thing is like, you'll watch people teach that, but then you watch their presentation and they don't do that. And it's like, wait, well, is that actually how you learned? Or it can really build in where there's this dependency on pushing out, dropping the front sight, and then when you switch to a red dot, if you build that habit, then you no longer have that margin of error. All right, so the first one is gonna be compromised grip, bad presentation, trying to do an A-zone headshot. Okay, and as you can imagine from that, any follow-up shots there, that's super over dramatic. What it probably really looks like for you is more along these lines. That was a 228. Here's a little bit more realistic example of what it might look like for you. Okay, so that's a little bit more realistic. That was a 174. My iron sight was way up high right. I had to correct it and fix it. If we have a good presentation, we pass our presentation, this is what it will actually look like. And that is a 123, okay? So if we look at the results, all within what I would call my acceptable margin of error, right, in the head box. The only difference was I failed the presentation on the first two, and then the last one I had good presentation, which just put me behind my sights. What you guys saw right there was a good demonstration of failing the presentation, and how on iron sights, a lot of times we don't notice that, and maybe that's why we prefer iron sights. The deficiency's there, we're just not measuring it. We're not going to competitions, or we're not going, hey, why can he draw and shoot that target, you know, half a second faster than me? The reason we want to show you guys that is we like to start with, hey, here's the why, right? Here's kind of why this might be happening, the symptoms of it, and mainly I think it's from a failed presentation. How do we get to the point where what we really, really want is, first of all, I ask people this all the time in class, I say, where does aiming start? What is it that starts aiming? And the answer is it starts the same place that it ends, with our eyes, okay? So once you tell people, hey, aiming starts with your eyes, it doesn't start with you like looking down at your gun, bringing your gun up, being like, okay, there's my sights, there's my target, line up my, like that's not efficient, right? What we need is we need the ability to make contact, visual contact with our eyes, bring the gun up and out and to that. Same way when we have a rifle, we do ready ups or we do whatever we do, that all starts visually. So that part's pretty simple, guys, as far as like, hey, it starts with your eyes, okay? But everything that happens between our eyes making contact and us making the conscious decision to say, hey, I want to shoot that thing. That's where the issue in lies. The way that we shoot iron sights or we shoot a dot, like it doesn't change. We're not like, oh, I'm shooting iron sights so I can drop the sight in from the 12 o'clock. Now I'm shooting a dot. Like, no, we just present the gun out, the sights are there. We do have to maybe make micro adjustments. We'll talk about that and how to drill that and see, is my grip effective? Is my grip consistent? Those are gonna be two things. So what really matters, guys, the first one is the mechanics of your presentation. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I don't see people struggle with this a lot, right? Drawing the gun or bringing the gun up to wherever you're at, you want to do it in an efficient manner. So if you watch the movement, guys, there's tons of ways to break this down. You can go 1, 2, 3. Like there's tons of videos on presentation. We're not going to spend a whole bunch of time on it today. There's one thing I will hit on that I think people make a big mistake of, and when you do the consistency drill with grip that we're gonna show you, this is what you'll run into. This left hand, you want to have some sort of index point for this left hand, because if it's just floating out here, that will affect your consistency and grip. I'm not gonna say that's like a always never type thing, but majority of people that I have seen, one of the biggest problems they have is they put that hand out there and they bump off of it because they're less dexterous. It's not hopping on to the gun at the most opportune time. When you think about it, when I go to draw this gun, I bring the gun up and that's my elbow movement, a little bit of shoulder movement. But once I do that, then I'm rotating my shoulder through. And so there's kind of this natural pause when I kind of run out of room this way that I rotate the gun. That's a great time for this left hand to be jumping on board and forming a consistent grip.
Biggest thing is just doing dry fire reps with that. You can kind of you can really figure that stuff out on your own. It's not
rocket science.
It's not crazy. We're not blowing anybody's mind here with what Garrett was saying about having the gun come out and then rotate, and that being a good starting point. The more you do dry fire reps with that, you can kind of build that. Again, it's muscle memory, and you can kind of find the most efficient path to put your hands.
Well, and then just be open to critique. Like even if you, like this is not something that is going to really affect your performance nearly as heavy as failing the presentation. So even if you present and you're like, you do something a little bit different where you like to meet down here, and it's like that's just more efficient for you to meet down here versus up here, or you're a little bit robotic, like a lot of tactical dudes, their draw strokes will look like that. It's like that can be ironed out. That's really not the end of the world. There's a little bit of lack of efficiency in that. You know, making sure that you're kind of meeting with both hands and you're aiming with both of your hands. Like that's something I tell people is like, don't just aim with your right hand, aim with your left hand too. So one of the drills that I really like, I don't know where this came from. I don't know where I got it. It just kind of one of those things. It's like,
It's floating out there.
it's just been around. So whoever, if you know who originated this Sharpie mark indexing thing, by all means, drop it in the comments, tell me, great. I'm sure there's multiple instructors that came up with it at the same time. But basically what it is, if you look, both me and Ryan have these little marks on our hand that we've indexed for each other. And how this works is, it's a great dry fire drill. So you basically just draw your gun, go, okay, that grip feels good, make any little adjustments to your grip that you want. So you have them basically mark just an index point for where your grip is good. Once you have that index point, you can go and shoot, you know, whatever, go shoot a match or go shoot or go drill. And it gives you a actual reference point for you to visually look at and go, not like while you're shooting, but you shoot a drill, you stop, don't change your grip and go, yeah, okay, I'm in the neighborhood, that looks good. You can also just dry fire this, right? You sit there and pull the gun out, and I like to make an educated guess on, do I think my left hand's rolled forward a little too more? Is my, like, what's going on with my grip? And this one I can feel a lack of pressure on my pinky, which tells me I'm probably kind of trying to push too far forward with my left hand, and sure enough, like that's the misalignment. So what's great about that is you can rep this out multiple times and have a visual reference for how consistent is my grip. Remember, we said there's two things your grip needs to be. It needs to be consistent and it needs to be effective. And in order for it to be effective, it needs to be consistent. Talking about how to evaluate, do I have an effective grip, okay? And an argument could be made, do I need to worry about the effectiveness first and then I train it to be consistent? Or, you know, it all depends on your level of skill as a shooter. If you're brand new to shooting, figure out what an effective grip feels like and make that consistent. If you're already you're in the neighborhood of, you know what a grip should feel like, but you're failing your presentation and that's what's changing your grip, you know, hey, this is a good grip, this feels right. Then focus on making that grip consistent. So the first drill that we want to show you for evaluating an effective grip is, it's kind of a little bit tricky, but if you bear with me, you listen to the whole process, I think you'll understand what I'm trying to show you here. So what we have is we have just a little white visual focus spot here, and we have an aid that we'll use in a second with kind of tracking what a red dot does. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have a compromised or just a not very adequate grip. And I'm going to basically shoot when my red dot hits kind of where I want it to be. So here's the objective. I start with my red dot here, I fire, my red dot's gonna go somewhere upwards, right? As it returns, I am accepting wherever it returns and firing. I'm committed to shooting. This would be kind of more of borderline a prediction versus a reaction. So I'll fire, the gun will return, I'll fire again, and I'm gonna shoot about 5 rounds, and we're gonna look at what that group looks like. So I'll get right into it. You don't need to be insanely far back from this, guys. You can kind of evaluate it from about 3 yards away. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is this is absolutely a compromised, crappy grip. I line my sights up, and again, like I said, I'm accepting where that dot lands and firing. This isn't an aiming drill, this is a grip effectiveness drill. So, crappy grip, everything kind of messed up. All right. Now you can see I had a bad grip there, everything's compromised, it doesn't look great, right? So what I saw is I had my first round here, dot went up, I saw the dot kind of come here, and it ended up being like top left of my window, so I fired. It went up, top right, so I stayed relatively center because I let the gun go up and down. There's all sorts of bad things you can do with your grip that will put you more off the left, more off the right. If you have, you're crushing way too hard with your right hand and left hand isn't doing enough, that'll generally start to push you off to the left. But the point being here is we see this group size, that's me just accepting my dot landing where it's at. The next one I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this fresh target here, and I'm gonna do it with a good grip and show you what it looks like if you have a effective grip. Okay, so now keep in mind, I'm trying to be accurate here, but I'm not worried about, I'm not trying to stack rounds on top of each other. I'm trying to put good, a tight group there where the dot comes down, I fire, dot comes down, I fire, dot comes down, I fire. It's kind of why I call it like a bouncing bill. Or a bouncing ball. It's very similar to practical accuracy drill. So I come out, good grip. That's what I'm looking for, right? So you can notice my group tightened up. I'm a lot closer to where I was actually visually looking. This is a pretty effective grip. Now there's always room to get in there and be like, okay, why did that one drift a little bit to the left, and evaluate this as you get to a higher level. But for the average person being able to do that, that's what we're looking for. That's practical accuracy. I'm splitting the gun, I'm watching the dot just kind of come in, bounce, 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 okay? The last thing I want to show you guys is the capability to have a completely compromised grip but shoot a group like this. The only difference is this isn't really done on a timer. You're not measuring how long this takes you to do. This is a visual drill, right? It's the bouncing ball off of there. So if we ignore that and we say, I'm going to shoot a tight group, we can actually achieve a very similar group, sometimes even better, because we switch the drill over to an accuracy drill. How well can I adjust and put that red dot on there? So what I want to show you by that is I can get away with that same thing, but I'm not actually testing the effectiveness of my grip, right? So I can build a crappy compromised grip, I can come out, right? And I can go, okay, the dot came down. Okay, that's a really good example, right? So you would look at these two drills and be like, man, I put all 4 rounds through the same hole, but that's not the purpose of the drill. That's great. That measures your ability for the dot to go up to wherever, it to come down, you grab it and then pull it back over to the center and press the shot. Fine. That's not the purpose of the drill. This is the purpose of the drill. To be able to fire those repeated shots, have that dot just kind of come down, that's checking, is my grip being effective at returning my red dot right back to where I'm looking? All right, guys, so we showed you how to evaluate the effectiveness and the consistency of your grip. Obviously, there's tons of other drills out there that do this. This is just the ones that I find myself using a lot with students because they're simple to understand, and if you're really out there trying to get better at a more effective, grip, these things are gonna work for you. One of the biggest things I think I realize with people is we're so results focused. So we get a red dot on our gun and we're like, I can't see the dot, I can't see the dot. And a lot of people don't wanna spend the time that it takes to make sure they have an effective and consistent grip. And so it just kind of frustrates them and they're like, I don't care, I'll just keep dropping that front sight in the, kind of sticking with my dependencies on that. So what we're gonna finish or what we're gonna leave with today is kind of a drill that I do in a lot of our Pistol 1 classes, and basically it teaches you a whole bunch of different things. It talks about sight pictures, starting the engagement with your eyes, all of this, but it's a really good way if you're having a hard time finding your dot. This is kind of the homework that I would tell people. You're gonna go live fire, this is something you can't really do in dry fire. And so the way this drill works is, again, visual aid. We put something in the center that just teaches people, hey, look where you want those rounds to hit. With this IPSC target, center mass is obviously the most preferable place to hit. So what we do is we set our focus to that. And the first thing I tell people is, okay, turn your red dot off, turn it off, okay? present the gun out and just shoot as soon as the gun, if your grip is telling you, hey, that feels good, I think my grip is where it needs to be, it's within my margin of error, it feels good, I'm looking where I need to, present and shoot. What that does for you is it starts to link up that perceived point of aim, that grip, that index, that point shooting, whatever, it's been around for a long time, but that's all from you having that consistent grip. If we change the angle of our grip, it's inconsistent, we're gonna have a really hard time doing that. And then if your grip is effective, guess what's gonna be there for you after, as you start shooting? Your dot, right? If you're looking somewhere, you're shooting and that round is ending up there, unless you're looking over your optic, like not even through it, your dot would have been there. So I'm just gonna walk Ryan through this entire process, let you guys kind of see how it looks and how it works. So first thing I want you to do, Ryan, is go ahead and load and turn your dot all the way off. Or at least to where you just can't, so you can't make it out, you can't see.
There we go.
Okay, so what Ryan's gonna do is, the only time I want you to kind of stop is if you can purely tell your grip is jacked up. Like if you're drawing out and you're like, this is not a good grip.
Gotcha.
So keep in mind, guys, I'm not gonna tell him to slow down, but I only want him to draw as fast as he can formulate a good grip. So right now, we're not trying to improve the speed that Ryan draws. We're trying to improve his grip. So a lot of people get hung up on focusing on that. They'll like try and do a fast draw. That's not what this is about. Do a draw that's comfortable for you. That can be fixed in dry fire. Okay. All right, so what you're gonna do, Ryan, is you're gonna set all your focus to that white paster. You're just gonna draw the gun out, and as soon as that gun feels level, you're going to take that shot. It might feel a little uncomfortable for you at first when you're doing this, guys, but if you're close enough, you have a big enough berm, you're not gonna miss the target. You might just have a low alpha, high Charlie, something like that. All right, you ready?
Yep.
On you.
All right.
Good. So you guys notice there was still even a little bit of hesitation of Ryan looking, hey, where's my dot, right? And that is what is very natural for red dots is with iron sights, like I said, we just kind of look past it. So not bad, you were just a little low left of the paster, but that's totally acceptable. Let's do it again, just try and get rid of any little pause. As soon as that gun feels level, I want you to fire.
Okay.
On you. Good, so that was a much better representation. What I'll do sometimes with students when it's really hard is I'll literally say fire. So as they're presenting up, they'll hear me go fire and they'll have to shoot as soon as that gun is level, okay? And what we can see here is with Ryan having those two shots a little bit low and left, but it's totally within what I would call a very acceptable for the time that you're presenting that gun. And you just rep this out. What this does for him is if he's looking through his optic and his impacts are here and he's looking right here, guys, if he's looking through his optic, guess what's gonna be there? His red dot. There's no way it can't be there. So after he's repped that a couple times, let's do just a couple reps back to back for you. Good, so did you feel that one?
I felt
right?
My support hand was
support
totally
hand.
jacked up.
So what's great about that, guys, is he threw one into the Charlie, which is not the end of the world, but what happened is immediately I asked him, it's okay. What I like to know is, did you feel that? Can you associate what happened back here? Because there is no red dot. You're not using sights. So he has to use his first sight picture, which is his grip. And I can say, could you have called that shot low and left? Did something feel off? And you're thinking immediately was like, yeah, my support hand was jacked up, right? So that's where when we take that dot away, most people would say, oh yeah, I saw my dot low and left. Well, why did you see your dot there? Good, it's a little bit low, but not too bad on that. Okay guys, so what he could do is he could come out here and he could continue to rep and rep and rep and rep. Then the next step I'm gonna say is, all right, Ryan, what I want you to do is I want you to starburst your dot. In other words, turn it up as bright as you possibly can. So go ahead and crank the brightness on your dot. All right, now the drill doesn't change. In other words, I want that dot so overwhelmingly bright that it doesn't really do in his brain any good besides just say, oh, there was something red. So he's gonna do the same presentation. At this point, a lot of people are gonna wanna slow down and see that dot. So I'm visually gonna cue him in and say, or I'm sorry, I'm gonna verbally cue him in and say, shoot, so that he doesn't stop and look for his dot, right? All right, you ready?
Yep.
Same exact drill. On you. Shoot. Good, very good. A little bit to the right, but solid.
Yeah.
Then what I do when I have this, did you see a flash of red?
Yep.
Was there any red, right? Yep. Something red appeared, right?
It was on the right side of the window, the round hit right, so
yep. Yeah.
It all adds up.
And that makes sense. And what will happen is sometimes people aren't, like Ryan's a little bit more visually kind of developed, I guess, or experienced when it comes to shooting. So he's gonna be a lot more keen to like, okay, I saw the dot over here on the right. For a lot of people, what it will turn into is, did you see anything red? And they'll be like, yeah, something was red. I don't know exactly where it was at, but I ended up seeing something red. Let's do a couple more.
Yeah. And I was making the conscious effort to, as soon as I see any kind of red, to press the shot.
Yeah.
So.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
On you. Good. Center, right?
Yep.
One more. Very good. All right, so What we've just proved, guys, is if your grip is consistent, it's effective, you know, and if you want to test a little bit more of the effectiveness, you can do follow-up shots. Like I think that's a really good drill to, instead of just doing one shot, you do multiple shots to make sure that your grip is returning you. But the first iteration, I think this is really important for people to practice because it basically links up. It's kind of like algebra, right? If we're missing X, if the dot is what we're missing, well, then we can say, I look here, I put a bullet there. If I'm looking through my optic, then my red dot should be there. What this will expose to people is if you fail your presentation, you aren't going to be putting rounds in that A zone. I've seen it happen a lot where it's not going to be catastrophic, but you'll have some that miss over the shoulders because people present like high with the muzzle up high. And so when you force people to present the gun out and shoot and accept what their presentation like kind of gets them, it starts to show them like, hey man, you might as well just slowly bring the gun out and then adjust and aim because that's essentially what you're doing. Nothing that you're doing from here to here is setting you up for success in shooting that target.
Yeah, I think this is where the throw the ball analogy really comes in because I don't have a way to aim throwing a ball and I mean, sure, I know there's technique to it and everything, but even if you don't know, you can get a ball over there in a general area.
Yep.
That's kind of what this is. If you've shot a little bit and know how to grip your gun, it's just put a hole in it, you know?
Absolutely. So guys, this is what I call kind of the link up drill. And I will, as I get more advanced at this, you know, when you're a beginner, you probably want to start at like 3 yards because you might have some things in your grip that are really going to cause you to send some rounds. It might really surprise you. That's why it feels uncomfortable at first for people is they go, oh, I've only ever trusted my sights. When I'm shooting something this close, I am purely focused on getting that gun out in front of me. And as soon as that gun feels level, I'm pressing the shot. And that's due to, I know by the time I get to here whether my grip is compromised or not. If someone's right in front of you and they're presenting a threat to you, if you fail your presentation, it's just going to degrade your accuracy. You're not going to stop and wait to make those shots. And it's kind of one of those imperfect things. Like I like to train it out here, not because I'm like, this guarantees me that I'll win that situation, but it's like, man, in that situation, I want every advantage I can gain. Every advantage I can gain. And now if I have something that's telling me, hey man, if you have a good grip and you do all the right things, that red dot will be there, but also you've trained it so much out on the range that you know if that dot's off by a little bit, it's probably not gonna be missing the target at that distance. You move back to 10 yards, okay, now maybe you have somewhat of an issue and you need to make sure you fix your grip, right? So guys, that's really the way, in my opinion, to learn how to shoot a red dot. If you're having problems finding the red dot, you're not having problems finding the red dot, you're having problems presenting your gun. That's the reality of it. The fundamental thing that's going on is not that you need some trick or you need something. It's literally just you need to dry fire and you need to get good at successfully presenting your gun. If you don't want to do that work, then I don't know what to tell you. There's no trick, there's no secret, and there's a lot of stuff that are going to fill you up with false sense of confidence. All encompassing, guys, basically what this means is if you're not finding your red dot, you're failing your presentation, and you need to have a presentation and a draw that leads you to a consistent and effective grip. I think that pretty much sums up everything we did here. If you can do those things, you probably won't have a hard time finding your dot.